Hey, VC, it's Mike. This time around, I actually did a random pulled out three CDs out of a pile of basically unorganized stuff, stuff I haven't listened to in a while. I really pull out some winners on this one. I'm going to start off with probably my favorite out of the bunch, probably one of my favorite albums of all time. We're going to travel back to Germany in 1970s. Krautrock, German rock, whatever you call it. Uh, Love all that stuff. There's, people in the VC. Most people are acquainted pretty much with Krautrock. Some people watching this probably don't even know what we're talking about. But the album I'm going to show is actually a very good place to start. It's actually an atypical Krautrock album, but it's perfect. It's by a band called the Cosmic Jokers. Upside down. It's called Galactic Supermarket. The Cosmic Jokers were made up of Manuel Gotchi on guitar, Klaus Schultz keyboards, Jürgen Delays on piano, grand piano, acoustic piano, Dieter Dirks on bass, Harold Graskoff on drums. Dieter Dirks is a famous, well-known producer and an owner of a studio in Germany. He was probably best known to most people as a producer and a recording engineer involved with the band The Scorpions, a German band, sort of like a heavy metal band I never really listened to. A lot of my friends growing up loved that band. I really never heard much of their stuff just on the radio. But this particular album right here is, like I said, it's probably one of my favorite albums of all times. I rank this in sound quality and musical performance as high as like Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon or Led Zeppelin's fourth album. Under different conditions, if this was marketed differently or came out of the US or even England, I'm sure it would have been more popular than it is right now. This version that I have on CD is by it's a reissue on a label from France called Spalax. I don't know how legitimate that label is. I've seen Japanese import CD versions of this. I've never seen this on vinyl out in the wild. I'm sure it's very expensive. It was originally on the Or label, and that's an interesting part of this music. The Or label was owned by Ralph Ulrich Kaiser. He actually owned two other labels, the Pills label and the Cosmic Courier label. I'm going to say some words about Ralph Ulrich Kaiser. He was originally, I think, a music writer. I think he wrote a book on interviews, including Pete Seeger and Joan Baez. But to me, one of his greatest accomplishments was he arranged and hosted a music festival in the German city called Essen in 1968. It was a 4-day festival, sort of like a Woodstock. The lineup for that festival, in my opinion, I would rather have gone to that festival than Woodstock. The people that performed there were Amon Düül, Tangerine Dream, the Fugs, Frank Zappa's first German appearance, also Brian Auger, Joey Driscoll, people like that. So I mean, I wish they put that on some kind of vinyl or CD issue. There might be a bootleg of that stuff. I'm sure it's great. It was a 4-day festival, though. Really good stuff. The lineup was incredible. This stuff right here has a strange history behind it. Evidently, when it first came out, Ralph Ulrich Kaiser released, I believe, 4 or 5 Cosmic Joker albums in the span of 1 year. This is their second album, the self-titled Cosmic Joker album. I've heard is better than this one. I haven't I actually never heard that one. The other album I have by like this group is called Planet Sit-In. Um, yeah, so what happened here is evidently the musicians involved in this were in a studio. The story goes that Kaiser gave them LSD and they performed, uh, and he released this without their knowledge. Uh, Manuel Gotchick says that he was at a record store a few years after this recording and heard this being played and asked the clerk who it was. He didn't even realize it was released. So, because of that shady dealings, all the musicians involved sued Mr. Kaiser over the release of this album. Um, so what happened is most of the bands left his label and went to Tangerine Dream, for example, fled his label and ended up on Virgin Records. I think my favorite stuff by them is the Virgin years. And then two guys who worked for Kaiser formed the Brain label, which is another fantastic, krautrock rock label. Well, let's get down to the scene of the music. This music is just mind blowing stuff, completely mind blowing. To me, this features Klaus Schultz's best synthesizer playing that I've ever heard. He coaxes every possible sound out of a synthesizer, quite different than his solo recordings. My favorite thing he does on here, he creates a flute sound like our Carlos Nakai, the American Indian guy. It's like a cross between a wood flute and an eagle bone whistle, that type of sound. It's incredible. He does a little bit of different kind of variations, draws the album up with that sound. But yeah, his playing on here is from A to Z, every possible sound that can be coaxed out of a synthesizer, he pulls it out. Manuel Gotchick's guitar playing on here it's a searing, blistering sound. To me, it's a cross between John McLaughlin and Jimi Hendrix. It's that good. The drummer, Harold Graskoff, like all krautrock drummers, have their unique sound. It's incredible how all the German bands, the drumming is incredible. It's totally different. All these German bands purposely avoided sounding like an American or an English rock band from this time, and this is a perfect example of that. Nothing I've ever heard can even come close to this as far as the unique sound of all the players. The bass, keyboards, everything is perfect. There's two long songs, but 18 minutes, 19 minutes each. It's a like total 38 minutes. It's a perfect album. Not one mistake or filler, that type of thing. The first song is called Kinder des Alls, which can be translated as Children of Everything, or more idiomatically, Children of Space, which kind of fits in with the theme of this music. The other title track, A Galactic Supermarket, that's it's another, like I said, just everything's beautiful on this stuff. I actually love Ashrad Temple. There's an Ashrad Temple join-in album, but the Cosmic Joker album, Galactic Supermarket, is even better than this. This album was recorded during the sessions for Walter Wigmuller's the double album called Tarot. So in between those sessions, the Ashrad Temple guys recorded this. There's a different rhythm section on here. The rhythm section on the Cosmic Jokers is actually better than here. And an interesting fact, Klaus Schultz is known as a keyboard and synthesizer player. He's also a drummer. On here, he plays drums and synthesizers. Harold Graskoff on this album plays drums, but he's also a synthesizer player. He's released several solo albums, synthesizer-based stuff, in the later 70s that I haven't heard, but I really want to hear those. But again, this album is it's accessible. It's a krautrock album that's actually accessible to even a brand new listener to the German krautrock scene. So it's recommended for anybody. But it's really hard to find, unfortunately. Um, this album right here, this is a reissue by Manuel Gotching, remastered all the Asherah Temple and solo stuff that he put out. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, he hasn't released the Cosmic Joker catalog. Klaus Schultz seems to disavow the Cosmic Joker catalog. I'm pretty sure it's because he just has this grudge against Kaiser for maybe not getting royalties. But I mean, if you're a fan of Klaus Schultz, this Cosmic Joker album is a must. It's really. I mean, I can't uh, recommend this enough to anybody out there. Like I said, Pink Floyd fans would love this. Anybody new to the krautrock scene, it's just jamming, and it's got female vocals, in the background too. They're called Star Maidens. One is Rosie Mueller, and the other was Jill Letman. Uh, Jill was Kyle's girlfriend. Rosie Miller was Manuel Gotching's girlfriend at the time. But yeah, this stuff is just it's magnificent stuff. And like I say, krautrock people, this is something I don't know how many people know this album in particular, but it's worth really hunting down or at least listen to online. It's really worth your time. Another thing I wanted to talk about is uh, the fact that on this album, there was a story that they were under the influence of LSD when they made the album. Manuel Gotchi recently came out and said that wasn't the truth. They weren't under the influence of LSD. The music sounds too put together and too concise and too arranged to be, been recorded under the influence of LSD. I mean, anything's possible, but I doubted that story originally. Kaiser was friendly with Timothy Leary. Asherah Temple did a album called Seven Up with Timothy Leary. That's also great, but not as accessible as the Cosmic Jokers. Here's a great Klaus Schultz compilation 3 CD of unreleased stuff, Volume 1. I think there are like five volumes that were released of his stuff like this. That's this is the first one, but every one of them is probably just as good as this one. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the concept of people recording music under the influence of drugs. That's a topic for further discussion. Either good or bad can come out of that, pros and cons. But here's a band right here, Japanese percussion ensemble Kodo. In 1975, they actually ran the Boston Marathon, and at the end of the marathon, they did a concert. So here's a bunch of guys who were under the influence of a runner's high, not LSD. I mean, physically and mentally exhausted, and yet they performed a percussion ensemble concert after running the Boston Marathon. So that's a different form of altered consciousness. So it can come, altered consciousness can, come about through all different means: meditation, spiritual practices, as well as LSD or other substances. If you eat enough garlic, that could probably alter your consciousness too. So if you eat a lot of garlic and create music, it might influence the sound of your music. You don't know until you try. The next album I'm going to show is by a guy who I knew from his soul jazz stuff. Les McCann. His most popular song is called Compared to What. I actually have a version of it on vinyl by Roberta Flack on this album called First Take. The first song on side one. And an interesting side note, the liner notes were actually written by Les McCann. I don't know if maybe he discovered Roberta Flack. I really don't know that. But this album right here is called Invitation to Openness. I bought this when it came out in 2015 for two reasons. It was on the Omnivore label, which is a great reissue label. The second reason is at the back of the CD has the song titles. There was only, three songs on the entire album, and a bonus issue of a live version of Compared to What. So based on the title itself and Invitation to Openness, and the fact that there were just three songs on it, I said, well, it's got to be something a little bit different. It can't be just soul jazz. It ends up being one of the most spectacular electric piano Fender Rhodes albums I've ever heard. I know a lot of people out there love electric piano and Fender Rhodes stuff, but the personnel on here, as well as Les McCann playing synthesizer electric piano, features Jody Christian on piano. He's a guy that was one of the founders of the AACM in Chicago. Did a lot of stuff on the Delmark label. Played with a lot of people from Chicago. I really don't know that much about Jody Christian. I don't know why. I never owned any of his solo albums. I'm sure they're great too. But the personnel on here was actually handpicked by the producer Joel Dorn, Cornell Dupree, and David Spinoza on guitar, Bernard Purdy on drums, Alphonse Mouzon on drums, and the third drummer, a guy named Donald Dean, which I never heard of. Yeah, the bass players, I don't really know, but Yusef Lateef is on here. He plays tenor sax, oboe, and his flutes. He doesn't really have much solo spots on here, but where he does the solos, they're up to par with anything he's ever done. The first song is called "Lovers." That was totally improvised in the studio. It's a shimmering masterpiece. This album has spots where it sort of stays at a medium tempo. It's got an intense sound, but it's a quiet intensity. Um, that's really interesting. Quite different than most stuff that I've heard. It sounds a little bit. It wanders into like a bitch's brew type stuff because of the complexity of the sounds, but doesn't really stay there. Maybe a little bit of Herbie Hancock's Headhunters, but not that funky. But it's funky, but not as funky as that stuff. But it's really, like I said, it's quietly intensive intensity. It's really it's different kind of stuff. And the bonus track compared to what is a live version done in Germany, I think in 1975. It features Johnny Griffin on saxophone, Philip Catherine and Buddy Guy on guitar, Klaus Doldinger also on saxophone. I think it was released maybe on one of his a live album that was put out under his name, Klaus Doldinger from Passport. Yeah, but this is a really, really wonderful album. It's a Fender Rhodes fantasy world, really. I don't think Les McCann did anything else similar to this. It's probably a one-shot deal. I think, and it's on Atlantic Records of all, it's a major label. Looking back at it now, it's surprising that Atlantic Records would have put something like this out. But I think Les McCann was such a big seller that they took, gave him a shot at doing something as experimental as this. But yeah, this is something that I think everybody out there would enjoy, as well as the Cosmic Jokers album I showed. Yeah, those would appeal to everybody, I think. Um, this, this, uh, this is an album I got by Cornell Dupree. It's a solo album, but I just bought it maybe a month ago. It's his guitar playing is great. The background music, the other musicians are very basic and not really doesn't amount to anything. But I enjoy his guitar playing on here. He covers some popular songs by the Bee Gees. Does some Steely Dan stuff on here and Paul Simon. But his guitar sound is really good. He's got some great solo albums. He was in that band called Stuff. That's really worth hearing too. Um, the last thing I'm going to talk about is another great solo guitarist um, that I had the opportunity to see once at a music festival in Providence. Jack Rose. This album is called Raag Manifestos. This version I have is on the VHF label. Uh, he is a 6-string, 12-string guitar player. Uh, he sounds nothing like John Fahey or Robbie Basho. Most people are going to, on first listen, they're going to say he fits in that category, but he really has his own style. However, he is a huge fan of John Fahey. He's been seen on, he passed away pretty young, but he was pretty, famous for wearing his John Fahey t-shirt and famous also for covering some John Fahey tunes on some albums. And so I think his own albums and compilations also. But he's a unique, a guitar player, which brings me to a great story by John Fahey tells about Leo Kottke. When John Fahey received a demo tape from Leo Kottke, he played it in the office of his own label called Tacoma Records. Uh, and he said to the people in there, this guy is great. And they said, no, not really. He sounds just like you. And John Fahey says, no, he doesn't. So that goes to show you when you can't lump all those people together. Leo Kottke's different than John Fahey. Jack Rose is different than Leo Kottke. Jack Rose is different than John Fahey. But this album is called Raag Manifestos. The word rag, Raag, is a variation on the Indian word raga. The word raga comes from the Sanskrit word meaning to color or to dye, as in fabric, coloring fabric or dyeing fabric. It also has a root word similar, reg, R-E-G, that's found in the Greek and Persian language. So there's a deep connection, between the Persian, Greek, and Indian concept of raga. Um, he's influenced by some Indian guy that I never heard of. But of course, it's the American primitive style. The songs on here were recorded live, either in Virginia or Pennsylvania, in like 2003, 2004. My favorite song on here is called Tower of Babel. It's a great example of Jack Rose's style. The songs aren't really long, but they're not short either. They're just right in time length. But he's got his own unique sound on guitar that's definitely worth hearing. Um, that's some more nice artwork. on the inside, and the back has some other cool stuff. Yeah, but unfortunately, he died. I think he was only 38 years old. He had died of a heart attack. Um, so you can imagine what he would have accomplished uh, if he had lived longer. He probably has maybe 12 albums out on small labels, but I'm sure everything he has is worth hearing. People rank this pretty high, and he has an album called Kensington Blues. That was one of his later albums that also received, high ratings. Yeah, that's all for tonight, folks. Have a great night, and don't forget to wear your masks.